Cheers! It's birth story time! That's right, I had my baby. I'm finally gonna tell you my birth story. So many of you have been asking about it on social media. I'm finally getting around to do it at 3 weeks postpartum. First of all, I wanted to explain why I didn't do it right away. I've been having some guilt about the fact that I never did this for my two sons. So I'm gonna give you a quick rundown of their births, because it'll actually probably play into like why this birth was a little bit easier, and then I'll tell you all about Kira, my new daughter. My oldest son, Landon, who is now 6, was 10 days late. I was fully induced. I was not having any contractions. I was barely dilated, like still at 10 days late. Basically, they have to give you some medicine to soften the cervix so that the cervix can start to ripen and open up so that you can deliver a baby, right? Because if the cervix doesn't open, then no baby is coming out. So they give me this gel the night before, and I have to stay in the hospital overnight. And this, honestly, the scariest thing for me about all my births is having to get that IV in my arm. The next morning comes around, I'm still not dilated to the point that they need me to be to push, and so I did end up getting some Pitocin to speed up the process. So that essentially makes you have contractions. I do get an epidural. I did make that choice with my son, and I did do it with all my other babies. Getting an epidural is scary in the fact that there is a needle going into your spine. That is obviously very nerve-wracking. I'm not going to even lie about that. But I will say that once the drugs start going in, it's a game changer in terms of your level of pain. So anyway, with Landon, he was eventually born. I eventually did get to a 10. That's what your cervix needs to be at in order to actually push. And I was able to push him out, but it was a good hour and a half of pushing. So story for another day, but I changed doctors after I had Landon. And it wasn't so much about the pregnancy or honestly my labor and delivery, but the help that I received in postnatal I was not really happy with, and I decided to change doctors. My doctor I have now is Dr. Emily Sicking, and I would recommend her to anyone. I always joke that she could deliver me in a forest, and I would do it. I love her. So she delivered my second son, Liam, and Liam was also 5 days late. He was not a full inducement. I did go into labor with him. I was walking my older son, Landon, to preschool with my mom, and I started having contractions that were around like 3 or 4 minutes apart, and they were getting stronger and stronger. So I went to the hospital. I got in, my cervix was dilated about a 5, and then we decided that we needed a little Pitocin to escalate things. We could have obviously definitely waited it out. I know many people make that choice, but we did not. They broke my water for me, and he was 5 pushes and out. Thanks to Landon for breaking him in. So those are like the quick versions of those birth stories, and I'm going to make Kira's pretty quick too because there isn't a lot to it thanks to my boys. So Dr. Sicking also delivered Kira. She was a week late, and if you follow my Instagram, you saw that I did have a false labor alert. I've been having contractions kind of like off and on all week long, like pretty much every night starting around 4 or 5 p.m. I would feel something, and it would go until 10 p.m., and then the baby, Kira, would be quiet. So on Saturday, when they got worse and worse, I was like, we need to go in. And my husband knows me so well that he kept saying, are you sure? And he kept postponing it. He's like, I'm going to go cut my hair. I'm going to go take a shower. And I was like, ugh. But looking back now, seeing that I could actually wait for him to do those things, I was not at all in real full-blown labor. So we did go to the hospital, and what's funny is as we walked in the door, they said to me, first time mom? I'm like, no, third time mom. And they kind of like shooed me in like, oh, this lady knows what she's doing. And then, of course, they check me. I'm only 4 or 5 centimeters dilated. My contractions are slowing down, kind of going away. And they said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to go home. Like, if we're going to wait this thing out, I mean, they probably honestly would have given me Pitocin and moved things along. I just really wanted to see if it could happen on its own completely. So we went home, and things continued on that path for the next few days. Both my mom and mother-in-law were now here. We had just taken the boys to the pool, and we were at Big Five, which is a sports store here. I was getting baseball shoes for my oldest. And like, as I'm sitting on the ground, having him try on shoes, I am getting angrier and angrier. Like, come on, Landon, come on, just try it on. Because I'm having these contractions that I was assuming had been like the past couple nights where like I could, breathe through it, and they would probably go away in a couple hours, but they were getting worse and worse to the point that I was like, we have got to get home, and we've got to get Sean, and I've got to get to the hospital. So, of course, my husband, who was notorious for not answering his phone, was not picking up, but we did finally get a hold of him. He came home. We went right away over to the hospital. As soon as I got there, they saw that my contractions were a minute apart. They said, Dr. Sicking said that if you want an epidural, you should probably do it soon. So I did that. And right around midnight, I was still only 4 or 5 centimeters dilated. They said, do you want to get some Pitocin and move this along? And so they gave me the Pitocin. It was literally like 2 pushes and she was out. I couldn't believe it, to be honest. Oh, and also keep in mind, you guys, we did not find out with any of our kids what we were having. It was always my husband's job to be like, it's a boy. And to be quite honest, we all assumed it was going to be another boy. I didn't, my husband did, and my kids did, parents did. So my OB said, Sarah, reach down and pull the baby out. And I'm like, what? So literally picture my legs up. I reach down and I pull her up. And I said to my husband, oh my gosh, it's a vagina. And my husband's like, no, because the umbilical cord was like hanging in front so you couldn't see. And I'm like, nope, that's a vagina. And I just started crying. And I'll be honest, I would have been crying if it was a boy too. I cried during all my births. And I was just so happy to have a healthy baby in my arms. My husband was extremely surprised. I thought he was maybe expecting a girl because he had been debating over these girl names that we had. But he was in serious shock. And it had immediately jumped from like the baby girl to like, oh my gosh, she's going to be a teenager and she's going to have to date boys. And so, not that he wasn't happy, but I think he was just so shocked and surprised. I mean, it definitely took me a while too. I kept calling her he and hey bud for weeks. I mean, I still sometimes accidentally do it because I'm just so used to having only boys in my home. So I hope I answered your question. If I didn't, leave it in the comments below. I just want to say thank you so much for following and supporting me in my journey. Please, if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you soon.
Do not film us.